The return of the hostages' bodies from Gaza this week has exposed the fragility of Donald Trump's ceasefire plan and the deep wounds of the long and brutal conflict. 90 bodies, Israeli and Palestinians, have crossed borders in refrigerated trucks. Each represents not only a person lost, but a moral and political reckoning. On one side, Israel has received the remains of 7 hostages so far, among them Guy Ilutz, a young sound technician kidnapped from the Nova Music Festival, and Bipin Joshi, a Nepalese student who, according to eyewitnesses, deflected a grenade with his bare hands to save others. Both men were alive when captured. Both died of neglect or violence in captivity, and their funerals have been scenes of national anguish threaded with fury towards Hamas and frustration with the slow return of the remaining 24 bodies still missing in Gaza. On the other side, 45 Palestinian bodies have been returned to Gaza by Israel, many showing signs of restraints, bruising and neglect. They arrived at Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis, each body bag marked not by name but by number. Families queued outside the morgue, desperate for identification. Some, like Razmia Kadi, who has lost 6 of her children, search for any sign of a son whose fate is unknown. Her words, "Every time they bring in bodies, I come to look for him," echo the desolation of thousands. This grim exchange was meant to be a technical step in a 20-point plan. Instead, it's become its moral test. Israel accuses Hamas of violating the agreement by failing to return all the bodies by Monday deadline, threatening to halve humanitarian aid and keep the Rafah crossing closed until the bodies are returned. Hamas insists that not all the burial sites are known, that many bodies lie beneath the rubble created by Israel's own bombardments, and the Red Cross has confirmed that locating human remains in the middle of such destruction will take time, yet time in this volatile truce is running out. The head of US Central Command, Admiral Brad Cooper, has now publicly urged Hamas to stop shooting Palestinian civilians in Gaza and to seize what it called an historic opportunity for peace. His statement reveals a deeper anxiety that Hamas is not merely resisting Israel, but also reasserting violent control over its own population. Reports from Gaza show public executions of alleged collaborators and the silencing of dissent by Hamas. For many Palestinians, the fear is now twofold: of renewed Israeli attack and of Hamas's vengeance. Meanwhile, Israel's defense minister has warned that any delay or deception by Hamas will be treated as a gross violation of the agreement. The rhetoric is menacing. Already, drone strikes have resumed in parts of Gaza. The health ministry says at least 7 Palestinians were killed on Tuesday by Israeli fire near the so-called yellow line of withdrawal. The ceasefire, in other words, exists more on paper than in practice. The symbolism of these body exchanges is immense. They're the grim currency of political negotiation, the physical proof of promises made and broken. For President Trump, this ceasefire was meant to be the crowning diplomatic triumph of his second term, the end of a 2-year war and the beginning of Gaza's reconstruction under a transitional board of peace. Yet, the reality unfolding is far messier. Chaos in Gaza, mistrust in Israel, despair among mediators. The peace process has become hostage to the dead. In the words of Taisa Abed, a writer chronicling the war from a tent in Khan Yunis, the corpses issue could become the fuse that ignites a new round of conflict. That's a haunting warning. The return of the dead, meant to mark closure, may instead reopen the war. It's difficult to overstate the emotional scale of this moment. Families in Israel are mourning those who will never return alive. Families in Gaza are sifting through rubble to find bodies for burial, and each side claims the moral high ground, yet both are trapped in cycles of retribution. The exchange of the dead, the most basic human act of recognition, has become a political weapon. The international community now faces an urgent moral question. Can peace survive if compassion is conditional? Israel's insistence on using aid as leverage against Hamas may be strategically understandable, but it risks collective punishment. Conversely, Hamas's delay and internal violence betray the claim that it represents the Palestinian people. In truth, both sides are eroding the very idea of peace. The United Nations, Egypt and Qatar, key mediators in this process, are pressing for patience. But the humanitarian situation worsens by the hour. Hundreds of aid trucks waiting at the Rafah crossing, blocked by political vengeance. Food, Fuel and medicine are held hostage, just as the dead once were. The Red Cross warns that the search for human remains will take weeks, yet the politics of revenge allows no such grace. If there is one lesson from this tragic exchange, it's that peace cannot be built on the arithmetic of corpses. The release of bodies should be a humanitarian act, not a bargaining chip. The ceasefire will hold only if both sides understand that the dignity of the dead is the foundation of the living. The philosopher Emmanuel Levinas once wrote that the face of the other, living or dead, commands us not to kill. And that command is the starting point of ethics. And it's precisely what this conflict keeps forgetting. Until Israel and Hamas and the powers mediating between them recover that moral intuition, there will be no lasting peace. Only the ritual of ceasefires and of funerals. The return of the hostages' bodies is not closure, it's a mirror. It shows us the human cost of political pride, the moral blindness of power, and the tragedy of lives reduced to leverage. Unless that mirror changes, and we see and we recognize the historic opportunity that Admiral Cooper spoke of, then it will be another missed chance, and the dead will continue to speak louder than the living.